Hello, everyone. This is Shaina Silva. I'm here with my co host, Daniel Silva, and this is Haiti Prosperity Podcast. In the last episode, we talked about a best case scenario for the future of Haiti. Almost like a dream, we talked about the possibilities of what Haiti could look like if we really implemented a resiliency plan and if we had in place a contract, a doctrine, a constitution that really helped to redefine what it means to be Haitian and how to operate as a Haitian. Now, this constitution would have several things in it that would allow us to better understand how to manage our resources, reduce government into a small government, enabling more people in civil society to participate in the prosperity of the country, and ultimately having a shared narrative around how we tell the world or what we tell the world that Haiti is, who we are, what we represent, our history, our culture, a unified story that would be taught even at the primary school level. We touched on all of those things. And in this episode, I'd love to talk about, Dad, how you enforce such a doctrine. Because it's one thing to have documentation that says this is how you're going to operate and tell people that this is how they should operate. But then we've seen in the past where we have written constitutions, we've written plans, we've written manifestos, and very often they are not enforced. So that brings us back to the element of trust. How can we solve for that? Can we solve for that?
And as you well said, how do we enforce agreements or a contract that all Haitians would have between themselves, which is illustrated through a constitution within which where prosperity is at the center of such agreement that we call constitution. Enforcement is the key word here because, as you can recall from our last session, we put four pillars at the center of that constitution, which is human rights, property rights, the rule of law, and small government. Well, enforcement, law enforcement, and the rule of law, uh, being one of the pillars of such constitution, would be applied there to put everyone in a position of accountability. In other words, your actions, you have to be accountable for your actions. And that's an element that would lead to trust. So we all have to have trust in the system because we cannot trust people necessarily. So the system is what brings the trust there. So when we talk about rule of law, the laws themselves are a form of contract. And if somehow we can make sure that the different bodies within society play their roles and follow the rules, that's what gives you the rule of law. That can be done in several ways. And as futurists and technologists, we may tend to go into using technology to take the trust factor out of human beings and let the system itself create the trust by moving uh, activities from one step to another through technology. It's like a workflow, sort of a workflow process, but that gets managed and flow by a system of systems. However, before we get into inserting technology into our common contract, we have to want to do that. So, this is something that the society, civil society, has to engage in itself as far as wanting to have such rules and have such rules be enforced. So it has to come from society first. And once society agrees on working around the rule of laws, essentially you build trust.
So, what I'm hearing you say is that number one, you it is important to have this doctrine, but it's also important that this doctrine is enforceable and that people are held accountable for what this doctrine says. So it's not just about laying it out and having it be clear and everyone has their roles and we know what we're doing, but it has to be enforceable and people have to be held accountable for this, for the results of this. And not only should they be held accountable and should it be enforceable, or rather, by creating a system whereby they can be held accountable, you begin to enforce the rule of law, is what I understand.
That's correct. Now, the laws have to be governed, and governance is what will bring the trust in society in general. And good governance is a concept that has to be instilled into the operation, the day-to-day operation of the country. Currently, and it's not something that needs to be created or start from scratch. There are institutions in the country. There institutions both on the private side and the public side. It's just that those rules are not necessarily well followed and applied. In other words, you have to have checks and balances in different transactions taking place in the system. And I will illustrate with examples of a form of governance. If a country says that every so many years you will have elections, the country should not afford not to have elections or not to hold elections at the time that they should be held, because we are a signatory country with United Nations contract on good governance globally. And those rules exist within such agreements that we've signed at the United Nations level. And those rules and those laws exist within the country because they use the United Nations system for governance as a reference, to align our laws with the international agreements that we've signed. So we get audited around the reforms that should take place around our laws to adapt our country with the evolution of international agreements. So the example of holding elections is one parameter in good governance. In terms of the management of our finances, you should have an inspection of the books in terms of expenditures. But such inspection body should be independent from the institutions that are actually making expenditures, so that you instill the notion of check and balance. Now, if somehow the institution that's making the expenditures is the dominating institution over the inspection institution, it weakens the role of the inspection. So you have to be able to audit with authority so that rules can be implemented.
Wow. So this is actually a very intricate system within a system. So just to take it back a little bit, because you've said a couple of things that I think are fascinating, where you took the example of Haiti participating as a member of the United Nations in this global governance contract. And part of this contract says that you have to hold elections at a particular time when that cycle comes up, right? That's what you said. And if you don't hold elections at that time, in a way, you are breaking that contract at your local level, but then also at the global level, because you signed up to be part of a global contract that you will be a democratic nation that holds elections on a regular basis. So that's the first thing. And you're saying that we have not held our end of the contract because we don't hold elections regularly. We postpone them. Sometimes they just don't happen. There are delays, etc. So we're already breaking our contract at the global level, at the local level, and that's already something that creates a sense of disorganization, distrust, not just between Haitians in our leadership, but Haiti and the world. So the rest of the world will also have a challenge in trusting us in complying to global contracts. That's the first thing. Another thing you said was that good governance requires checks and balances. And part of being a member of this global contract requires a sort of regular audit that happens. So, someone from the United Nations governance body comes to Haiti and does an audit to see whether you've been complying to the rules that they've put out for the whole world who is subscribing to democracy to
Or if
as
you've been complying to your own
your own
rules
rules
that are tied to
to
those
the global rules.
global.
So they come and they do an audit based on the rules that you've set for yourself and the rules that you said you would comply with that are at the global level. So, two sets of rules. So, we are not complying with the rules that we've set in place for ourselves. We're already not complying, and we're not complying to the global rules. So, we have failed the audit, essentially, of good governance.
We failed the audits every year because we get audited every year. All countries get audited every year by other countries. So they create task force, country task force that go and audit a chosen country. And we usually fail in terms of complying with our own rules and laws that we've declared as that's the way that we will operate as a governing body. Countries are measured in terms of their level of compliance to their own rules. And there are about 180 so countries. And depending on how you fail on different parameters dealing with governance, you get classified, from on a scale of 1 to 180. So the more you don't comply, the worse you do in terms of your standing as a country. And you lose a lot of opportunities by failing your sense of governance because you don't portray trust to the global community, both on the public side and the private side. So, in order to even promote financing and foreign direct investment, large corporations look at your stand as far as risks management.
Wow. And I think businesses, just to put a parallel example to the country level example, businesses get audited as well to make sure that you are running an operation and paying your taxes on time and paying your employees fair wages, and that you don't have a terrible environmental footprint, which is something new that's being put in place. So companies are being audited on a regular basis on how they are performing in the global economic marketplace. It's the same exercise for countries. Are you treating your citizens well? Do they have services in place? Is there quality of life? Are you having significant environmental protection measures to enable or reduce the risk of climate impacts and things of that nature? And what you're saying is that we get audited every year and we fail every year. So we should have as an aspiration to improve our standing in this annual audit. And what I understand you're saying is also that it's not just the United Nations as a body that is conducting this audit. The United Nations partners with other countries to do the audit as well. Is that a way of reducing bias and things of that nature? How does that actually work?
Essentially, the uh, that body within the United Nations is composed of all the 180 so countries. So there is not a division within the United Nations that takes care of the auditing part. It's just voluntary countries. 4 or 5 of them are assigned to a specific country, and it crosses countries. So everybody, Haiti participates as well in auditing other countries. So it's a country transaction, and you have two
Who
or
has Haiti
three.
audited? I'm
Oh,
curious.
we've audited the Dominican Republic, we've audited
Ah,
Russia, we've audited Australia, because you become part of a group, a subcommittee that is
auditing.
assigned to audit a particular country. So it's a very diverse um, activity that takes place within the United Nations. But I wanted to mention that this is not just a public sector activity. the private sector, since bad governance is something that is not solely a public sector issue, because when we talk about corruption, there is a corruptor and a corrupted. So the private sector has to vouch to not corrupt public sector agents as well, and that's something
Right.
that needs to be reinforced in within the chambers of commerce, whereby it has to be part of their ethics of engaging themselves in not trying to corrupt public agents into reducing cost and all the things that we know that come with the concept of corruption. So it's not a one-way public sector thing. It's a full society, a full societal activity. Because when we talked about resiliency, it's a cross sector engagement of sort.
So this is a really major activity around ethics, which it has to be enforced. And the human element of that is not doesn't have the greatest track record, right? Because people want to cut corners, they want cheaper costs, they want faster, they want speed. And so bribing someone who is a public official is an easy way to get what you want.
Yes, and it's not difficult to find out where you stand in the scale of misgoverned country, because in the case of Haiti, Haiti has been standing in the 160 ish range over the years. That means that you are the bottom of the scale of well governed countries. So the day that you'll start really enforcing and taking such a position into account, through the audits over the years, you'll find yourself into 140 and go back to 120 and 80th most corrupt country, etc. But at least you'll get a sense of making progress over the years as opposed to getting worse. I think we've been getting worse because of not only known for this friction around corruption, but missing on institution building activities as well. When judges are not replaced in Supreme Court, that's a corruption, that's a non-governance activity. When you don't have a president, that's a non-governing activity. When you don't have a parliament, I think we may end up getting into the 180-ish level at this point. So that is something that needs, yeah. So we need to, so it's easy to measure where you are and where you stand. And within the audits, they tell you where the weak parts are and the risks, etc., and how you can improve what you need to do to improve. So it's not something that you say, well, I don't know what to do kind of thing. It's very clear and well defined.
Wow. So the rules of the game are laid out and we are losing. Or rather, we are winning at being at the bottom of the list, um, which we need to change. And I think this is an eye opening for me. I didn't know that there was such a governing body. I think most people don't, unless you're maybe involved directly in government. Um, but there's an opportunity there to innovate, to bring in fresh thinking, to bring in fresh leadership. I think the more transparency we bring around how things work, it becomes less ambiguous. It becomes more specific. You can see a business opportunity inside of a challenge. It becomes about prosperity versus survival because you understand it. I think where we stay stuck in the survival is when we don't understand the problem. We don't understand the resources that are in place that we can use to solve the problem. And we feel a sense of despair because it's all a black hole of issues. But what I like that we're doing here is actually dissecting these problems. And actually, they don't look or feel as scary as when we don't understand them. Because the way you just described this global governance body, it's pretty much laid out. You just have to follow the rules. It's as simple as that.
And if you do so, such exercise, it will have an impact on the population, on civil society. And as you were talking about trust, you didn't need to be demagogic about bringing trust. Just go through this exercise and vouch to make improvements on your way of governing, and the population will feel it immediately. You see what I mean? So,
And I think, so that goes with something you said earlier around the will to do so. Because if all of the elements are pretty much laid out in black and white, it's a matter of having la volonté de faire, the desire to execute on what has already been laid out at the global level. Now, the last thing that I want to maybe touch on.
and I wanted to make a point there that there is no technology needed to
Yes.
get to that.
Right.
The technology would be just an enabler, and it's beautiful and more transparent. But this can be done by your day-to-day activity and reporting and transparency.
I do believe that given how weak our human, not how weak the human error has made us, but the vulnerabilities in relying on human willpower or desire, that technology can help remove that friction. And this is where things like blockchain technology can become a significant enabler, where your laws become smart contracts that can be traced. So when you are auditing, the population can see where you stand. Because right now, who knows how we're performing internally with the government? All we know is that things are not being done. But there is nowhere, no digital footprint that shows you if things are moving ahead, if they're slow, what resources are needed, if there's more people that should be hired. Like, there is no traceability of the activities that are taking place. So we just know that they're not happening because we don't see a change. We don't feel it. The quality of life has not improved. But if we had a technology such as blockchain, for example, that enabled us to see what's happening, that could also help to reinforce trust. That could also help to bring in new innovative ideas on how to enforce that trust as well.
That's correct. And how do you put something like that into the blockchain? Is by putting all your laws within the concept of smart contract, and any behavioral activity that should take place for the next step in your transaction won't take place unless you did the first thing first. So we can go into an extreme. For example, if you went into the blockchain and said that elections have to be held, otherwise the transitional government won't have a budget to operate, that would change behavior immediately, because day zero, where there is no election, there is no more money. We went into an extreme, but that impacts behavior.
And then you get stuck. If step one did not get done, the smart contract blocks you from being able to do anything else because you cannot get to step two without step one being done. And we would automatically start to see results. So, Dad, I know that in this conversation around building trust and the need for effective governance, you've had some experience directly working with the Haitian government in that domain. Do you want to share a little bit about what that was like and what you've seen?
Yes, indeed. Essentially, Haiti is a signatory member with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which is called the UNODC. And that's where governance are managed as far as each country, each signatory is concerned. And I've had the opportunity to come and help enforce the institution that actually handles the governance issue in the country. There, I helped build an information system that tracks the workflow as far as cases of corruption or misgovernance are concerned. And there, I've had the opportunity to go and participate at international conferences dealing with the governance issue. I, I went to that office. The headquarters is based in Vienna, Austria, and I've also participated at conferences in St. Petersburg, Russia, where the issues of governance were addressed, where Haiti had to actually provide a report, an annual report on its effort in that sense, and be elected to become auditor, an auditor to audit other countries there. So that's how I got a sense of the structure of how a country, a signatory country, has a role to play within the international body that deals with such an issue.
And just curious, very quickly, why Russia? Why is this because it was a selected location for this conference or this meeting, or is there something particular with Russia when it comes to global governance?
No, I would say that the headquarters of the institution is in Austria. It's a United Nations office that's based in Austria, and it's the equivalent of the United Nations office in Geneva, and the other but where you also have a United Nations office in New York. Those are the three major United Nations offices. And the one that deals with governance is based in Vienna, Austria. For St. Petersburg, Russia, it just happened to be uh, every year those conferences, those annual conferences take place in chosen country. And when I had the chance to participate at such a conference, it took place in St. Petersburg, Russia. Wonderful city.
Okay. Wonderful experience. And the idea of global participation is a little bit more real when you go to those countries and you're able to see firsthand how other communities are managing their nation or talking about managing their nation. So good stuff.
For example, the topic of the 2021 conference was on a call to restore trust to tackle pandemic challenges, because 2021 was the year for the COVID pandemic, and the conference around the governance of pandemic there was a call to restore trust and achieve sustainable development. That was the theme of the 2021 conference.
Brilliant.